Now, this has really just been making headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump is making moves. He is now threatening to send U.S. forces guns a-blazing into Nigeria, saying that he's ordered the Pentagon to start planning military action after accusing the Nigerian government of failing to stop what he calls the mass killing of Christians. Now, Trump's warning comes as Nigeria continues to battle wave after wave of violence. The country is actually almost evenly split between Christians and Muslims. And one of its main threats has been Boko Haram. That's an extremist group that has spent years trying to impose its radical version of Islamic law, attacking not only churches, but also mosques and even Muslims that it doesn't consider Muslim enough. But beyond religion, Nigeria also faces clashes between farmers and herders over land, ethnic rivalries, and separatist movements that have turned deadly. And that is why President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria has rejected Trump's comments as false and inflammatory. He insists that Nigeria protects citizens of all faiths. Still, the fiery exchange has sparked outrage across Africa and concern in Washington about how far Trump's threats could really go. I'd like to turn back right now to our correspondent, Owen Alterman. All right, so to begin, tell us a little bit more about the violence that we've been seeing in Nigeria. What has happened right now that has really brought this issue to the forefront? And is it really driven by religion, or are we seeing this violence stemmed by other issues as well?
Well, I think from Trump's perspective, Natasha, it's obviously politics, right? A lot has been made from an Israeli perspective in the last few months. Why is there so much focus on Israel and Israel's treatment or alleged mistreatment of Muslims when you look at what's going on in Nigeria, right? And a kind of focus on Israel that's disproportionate. And that's been the claim. Ted Cruz in the U.S. Senate putting forward a bill to designate Nigeria using a designation under American law and putting the focus on this. And now we have Donald Trump jumping on board with his tweet or with his post. Look, Nigeria, you described it, Natasha, as a country that seems to be in constant chaos. And watching it from the outside, over the years, covering foreign policy and foreign affairs, international affairs for our channel and for our Hebrew channel, there's a kind of charm to it sometimes. The energy coming out of one of Africa's largest country in population, one of its largest economies. There's a kind of raw energy in Nigeria. But on the other hand, of course, there's a flip side to this. There's violence. There are people who are killed in the various layers of clashes, whether it be ethnic and religious, whether it be on resources, whether it be political. And you mentioned the lineup that's always there in Nigeria. Look, 7,000 Christians have been killed over the course of, 8 months in 2025, according to one figure coming out of Nigeria. It's not a small number. Of course, it's still a large country. As you mentioned, the Boko Haram activity has been going on for years, if not decades. I think a conventional American president would have tried to help the Nigerian state get the resources it needs to fight Boko Haram. Donald Trump has a different way of acting. A Christian pastor told the BBC, basically, we understand who we're dealing with. We understand Donald Trump. We understand the way he talks. We're not counting down the minutes or the seconds until the U.S. military is going to show up in Nigeria. He has a way of talking and expressing himself to try to crack the whip and get the Nigerian government to be more forceful on this. And it may well end up with somehow the United States and Nigeria working together, which is probably for the best. But as a political matter, Donald Trump going out there and showing conservatives that he has their back on this issue.
Right. The question is, when he says guns a-blazing in Nigeria, how seriously can that be taken, right? Could this actually alter U.S. engagement in Africa, or do you really just think this is purely political rhetoric right now?
Look, it's political, but obviously has a real-world impact. Donald Trump, with his enormous bully pulpit, his following, and his ability to set the agenda, has put this on the agenda. Natasha, the fact that we're sitting here at the Jaffa port in Israel and talking about it is by virtue of what Donald Trump has done. Of course, this has made news on the margins in Israel, but it's because of him that this is on the agenda. So it obviously ramps up the international agenda as soon as Donald Trump starts talking about it. Obviously, we take him seriously and not literally. The U.S. military is not about to show up in the middle of northeastern Nigeria to fight Boko Haram, but it puts it on the international agenda. Obviously, I think we can more realistically expect contacts between Trump and the Nigerian government, some kind of ramped up action. And if we're going to have an actual practical impact, hopefully work together between the Nigerian government and good actors on the ground, good faith actors on the ground, and the United States to try to put an end, hopefully, to Boko Haram and all that it stands for.
All right, Owen, I have to say a very interesting breakdown. You can just see the way that politics is influencing the way the headlines have been coming out as of recent. Obviously, I guess the good news is that we are seeing more coverage of very, very rural conflicts around the world.
Donald Trump has a way of doing that. Absolutely.
And that of Nigeria, whether or not the intentions are necessarily the right ones.